Nobody saw it coming. Not in this lifetime. Not in any era. Two juggernauts from entirely different worlds, colliding in a way no one dared to imagine. One made his name through bone-crushing fists and an aura of raw violence. The other rose through the ranks of wrestling and MMA, a force of nature with the kind of presence that could silence a stadium. Mike Tyson, the once undisputed heavyweight king, versus Brock Lesnar, the beast incarnate, whose name alone sends shivers down spines. This isn't just a fantasy matchup. It's the kind of storm legends are born from. Tyson wasn't just a boxer. He was a phenomenon, a cyclone in the ring, tearing through opponents like they were made of paper. His legacy is built on speed, savagery, and knockout power that could shut off the lights in a heartbeat. But across the combat sports spectrum stood a different kind of monster. Brock Lesnar, molded in the fire of pro wrestling but sharpened in the octagon, where real damage is dealt. His size is daunting, but it's the speed at which he moves for a man of that mass that truly defies logic. You could call it freakish. You could call it supernatural. Either way, it's dangerous. But this story isn't just about power. It's about pride, timing, and the thin line between fear and respect. Tyson, in his prime, was a walking explosion. A man who needed just one opening to end it all. Lesnar, on the other hand, made a career off closing the distance, overpowering opponents, and dragging them into his world. The question wasn't just who was stronger. It was about who could impose their will faster, whose instincts would kick in first when the lights turned red. Both men lived for the chaos. Both thrived when the stakes were highest. But what happens when you pit Tyson's predator mentality against Lesnar's unrelenting pressure? You're looking at more than a fight. You're witnessing a psychological war, a contest of dominance, where hesitation could mean destruction. Tyson's uppercuts that sent giants tumbling. Lesnar's slams that left fighters gasping for air. There's no running, no hiding, just collision. And yet it wasn't just physicality that defined them. It was the aura they carried. Tyson walked into arenas and opponents crumbled before the first punch was thrown. Lesnar, he stared through people. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to break spirits. So when whispers of a hypothetical showdown began surfacing, fans didn't just listen. They imagined. Now the atmosphere wasn't just hypothetical. It was volatile. Both camps began preparations. Footage emerged of Tyson training at midnight, hitting pads with a violence that seemed pulled straight from his prime. Meanwhile, Lesnar was spotted behind closed gym doors, bringing in heavyweight boxers, even tweaking his stance to handle a quicker, more unpredictable opponent. Something was brewing, and it wasn't just another media stunt. This was personal now. But the twist, it wasn't just Tyson and Lesnar involved anymore. A third party stepped in, one with power, reach, and a vested interest in seeing this fantasy become a reality. A high-stakes investor, someone with a history of pulling strings behind blockbuster events, entered negotiations, and with them came whispers of a rulebook neither fighter expected. No gloves, no octagon, no ring. Just a custom-built battleground tailored to both of their strengths and weaknesses. It wouldn't be pure boxing. It wouldn't be straight MMA. It would be a hybrid, something untested, designed to extract the most chaos possible from both styles. Suddenly, every plan they'd trained for was up in smoke. Tyson's footwork, his ability to bait and counter, would now have to adapt to unfamiliar terrain. Lesnar's wrestling, while still lethal, could be restricted in ways he hadn't accounted for. And looming above it all was the question, who benefits from these new rules? The investors claimed neutrality, but behind closed doors, there was talk of bias, of one side quietly influencing the structure for an edge. The stakes weren't just physical anymore. Pride, legacy, and the fine line between greatness and downfall had taken center stage. Tyson couldn't afford a misstep this late in his journey. Lesnar, still cloaked in that cold-blooded calm, had everything to prove to those who questioned whether he could hang with a pure striker. Every second closer to the fight only sharpened the edge. And then came a leak, an anonymous source claiming one of them was hiding an injury, not career-threatening, but enough to change everything. Somewhere between truth and myth, the night finally arrived. Not under Vegas lights or a stadium's dome, but on private grounds, in a location so secretive that attendees surrendered their phones before stepping past the steel gates. The battleground looked like something out of a dream, custom-lit, enclosed in reinforced glass, with no ropes, no corners, and no mercy. Tyson entered first, calm but electric, like a volcano waiting to erupt. Lesnar followed with that slow, deliberate pace, the kind that made the floor feel heavier with each step. There was no music, no theatrics, just silence before the storm. The opening seconds were pure chaos. Tyson moved like a ghost, feinting, slipping, darting in and out with punches that snapped like whips. Lesnar, undeterred, charged forward, absorbing the blows like someone who had already made peace with pain. He grabbed at Tyson, looking for the clinch, trying to turn the tide, but Tyson spun out, landing a vicious liver shot that made Lesnar stagger for just a beat. For a moment, it looked like the momentum had shifted. But Brock wasn't done, not even close. In a stunning pivot, Lesnar switched tactics. Instead of brute force, he began baiting Tyson, lowering his hands, and drawing him into a trap. Tyson bit. He lunged with a right hand that had ended careers, but Lesnar had timed it. He ducked, lifted, and slammed Tyson to the mat with a thud that made even the toughest fighters in the room tense up. The crowd didn't cheer. They gasped. For the first time in a long time, Tyson looked vulnerable, and as Lesnar tried to follow up with ground control, everything slowed. Then came the twist no one expected. As Lesnar moved to mount, Tyson locked in an old-school peekaboo defense, coiled up like a spring. And then, with a timing that defied his age, he exploded upward with a brutal uppercut from the floor. A strike so clean it caught Lesnar right under the chin. The beast froze mid-motion and collapsed sideways, stunned. Tyson scrambled to his feet, not celebrating, not even chasing, just staring down at a man few thought could ever be stopped that way. The referee hesitated, uncertain of how to even call it under the hybrid rules, but the investor stepped forward and signaled the end. It was over. Tyson didn't smile. He didn't raise his hands. He simply turned and walked away, his legacy intact, untouched by time. Lesnar slowly rose, dazed but nodding in respect, as if acknowledging a truth he had tried to deny, that some instincts are older, sharper, and more dangerous than brute strength. But just as the crowd began to process what they'd witnessed, the final curveball dropped. In the post-fight footage, barely a whisper over the ambient noise, Tyson was caught saying something to his trainer, something off script. That wasn't the real plan. He held back. Someone warned him. The trainer didn't respond. But that single sentence rewrote everything. Who interfered? What was the real plan? And most haunting of all, did Tyson win the fight, or did someone else make sure he did? And that's the part no one can explain.